Lyra stood quietly on the rooftop of the human building, her pale blue skin almost blending into the early morning light. The bustling city below seemed so different from the quiet, peaceful life she knew on her home planet. She was here on a mission that made her heart ache every time she thought about it. Her assignment was to observe, to learn about the humans, and most importantly, to make sure they weren't a threat to her people. Her species had long kept their distance from Earth, considering humans to be too unpredictable and primitive. But now things were changing. A new galaxy-wide treaty was in the works, and Earth was about to be included. That was why Lyra was here, to see if Earth's people were ready to be part of something bigger. She had to make sure they weren't a danger to the peace her people had fought so hard to protect. As she surveyed the crowd below, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" The voice was warm, curious, and unmistakably human. Lyra's eyes flicked over to see a man standing a few feet away, his hands in his pockets. He was tall, with short brown hair and a face that was kind but worn from the weight of a life that didn't seem particularly easy. His eyes, however, held something Lyra had not expected: curiosity, but not the kind of curiosity that came from fear. It was a curiosity that was open, welcoming. You're human," Lyra said, her voice soft but firm, as if stating the obvious. The man smiled, clearly amused. "I am. And you're not, are you?" He glanced at her pointed ears, slightly raised eyebrows. "I'm guessing you're not from around here." "No," Lyra replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm from far away. I'm just observing, learning." "Learning about us?" he asked, stepping closer, his smile still in place. "What's that like?" Lyra hesitated. There was something about him, a warmth, an understanding, that made it hard to remember why she was here. This wasn't just an observation. She wasn't just cataloging human behavior like she had done with other species in the past. No, with him, it felt different. But why? "Yes," she finally said, "I'm learning about humans." "Do you like what you see?" he asked, his gaze searching. Lyra looked out over the city again, the sprawling streets and the busy people moving about. Humans were messy, chaotic, and far from perfect. But there was something about their energy, their drive, and their need to survive that made them fascinating. "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I think I'll learn something, perhaps more than I expected." He nodded, as if he understood her feelings, though he couldn't possibly know her true purpose. He didn't know that her entire mission was built on the idea of keeping Earth at arm's length. He didn't know how much was at stake. "Well, if you ever need help figuring us out, you know where to find me," he said casually, offering a friendly grin. Lyra looked at him, her heart suddenly beating faster. Could she really trust him? Could she trust any human? It was dangerous to let herself get close, especially now. But something in her stirred. Maybe, just maybe, this human could teach her something more than just how to observe. Something real. Over the next few days, Lyra and Ethan found themselves meeting often. At first, it was just casual conversations, questions about their worlds, their lives, and the things they both cared about. Lyra would ask about Earth's technology, culture, and history, while Ethan shared stories of human struggles, their achievements, and their hopes. He spoke with a warmth that Lyra hadn't expected. But the more they talked, the more Lyra realized how much she was learning. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but also capable of incredible things. They were resilient, constantly fighting to overcome the odds, and they cared deeply for each other in ways that Lyra hadn't seen in her own people. Her people were focused on peace, but it was a peace built on control, on strict order. Humans, on the other hand, lived with chaos, and yet they found ways to build communities, to love, and to protect each other. One afternoon, Lyra and Ethan sat together at a small cafe in the heart of the city. Lyra had never been in a place like this before. The warm light from the windows illuminated the room, and the sound of humans chatting and laughing surrounded them. For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt comfortable. "Why do you always wear that?" Ethan asked, nodding toward her clothes. "The way you dress, it's different." Lyra looked down at her attire. It wasn't that she hadn't noticed how strange it must look to humans. Her clothes, woven from the fabrics of her home planet, were sleek and dark, unlike anything on Earth. Her alien skin, blue with a touch of purple, contrasted with the bright lights of the cafe. Yet, despite how odd she felt, Ethan was only curious, not judgmental. "It's my way of fitting in with my people," she said softly, unsure of how to explain herself. "Back home, it's important to look a certain way, to be recognized." Ethan nodded, then smiled. "I get that. But here, you don't have to fit in. You're already different, and that's kind of amazing." Lyra blinked, surprised by his words. She had never thought of herself as amazing. She was just a messenger, sent to do a job. But Ethan saw her in a different way, a way she hadn't expected. He made her feel like she mattered for who she was, not for the role she was playing. "What about you?" she asked, changing the subject. "Why do you stay here? Why not go somewhere else? Earth isn't perfect." Ethan leaned back in his chair, looking thoughtful. "Because it's home, and even with all its problems, it's where I belong. People here, they make it better. Even when everything goes wrong, they fight to make it right." Lyra looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of doubt, but there was none. She could see the sincerity in him, the deep, unwavering belief that his world, his people, were worth saving. She realized that she had underestimated humans. They weren't just chaotic. They were strong. They fought for what they loved, even when they had nothing left. For the first time, Lyra began to feel something deeper than curiosity for Ethan. It was something she couldn't explain, something that pulled her toward him in a way that didn't make sense. She had been sent to observe, to learn. But now, she found herself wishing for something more. Maybe, just maybe, she had more to learn from him than she ever expected. Lyra stood by the window, gazing out at the city as the sun began to set. She could hear the sounds of traffic below, but her mind was elsewhere. Thoughts of Ethan filled her head, and for the first time, she found herself struggling to focus on her mission. She was supposed to observe, to stay detached. But lately, she felt like she was losing her objectivity. The door to the room creaked open, and Lyra turned to see her sister, Celine, step inside. Unlike Lyra, Celine wore the uniform of their people, sleek, silver armor that symbolized her position as a high-ranking officer. Her eyes were sharp, her posture rigid, and her presence commanded respect. "I've been watching you," Celine said, her voice cold and calculating. "You've been spending a lot of time with him." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "I'm just observing. It's part of my assignment." "I know what your assignment is," Celine replied, her tone unwavering. "But I'm beginning to wonder if you're forgetting your place." Lyra's heart sank. She had known this conversation was coming. Her sister had always been strict about following the rules, and lately, Celine had been watching her more closely, noticing every little detail of her interactions with Ethan. "Ethan isn't like other humans," Lyra said softly. "There's something about him, something I didn't expect. He's not what I was told to fear." "Fear?" Celine scoffed. "You're not here to make friends, Lyra. You're here to assess, to judge whether these humans are a threat to our people, and everything you've learned so far should tell you that they are. They're unpredictable, violent. They don't belong in the galaxy's peace." Lyra took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "But they're not all like that. Some of them, they have the potential for much more. Ethan shows kindness, and he doesn't fear me. I've seen the way he looks at me. He doesn't see me as an alien. He sees me as someone worth understanding." Celine's face hardened. "And that's exactly what makes you vulnerable, Lyra. These humans have a way of worming their way into your heart. They'll make you forget your duty. They'll make you question everything you've been taught." "I haven't forgotten my duty," Lyra said, a hint of frustration creeping into her voice. But maybe there's more to this than just keeping them in line. Maybe they're worth understanding. Celine stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. Don't let them fool you, Lyra. If you let your guard down, if you get too close to them, you'll be just like the rest of them. Weak, compromised, and easy to manipulate. Remember who you are. You're not a human. You're an alien. You're better than them. Lyra clenched her fists, the words stinging more than she wanted to admit. I'm not better than them, she whispered, more to herself than to Celine. And I'm not going to let you tell me how to feel. Celine's expression softened just a fraction, but it was enough to show Lyra the deep concern her sister felt for her. I'm only looking out for you. Just remember, human emotions can cloud your judgment. Don't let them change who you are. As Celine left, Lyra stood there, her mind swirling with doubts. Was she making a mistake? Was her growing bond with Ethan something that could jeopardize everything she had worked for? Or was it, perhaps, the very thing that could change her understanding of both humans and her own people forever? Days following her conversation with Celine weighed heavily on Lyra's mind. The warning from her sister lingered in her thoughts, and the pressure to remain detached grew stronger with each passing day. But every time Lyra saw Ethan, her resolve softened. She couldn't stop herself from feeling something for him, something she couldn't explain. One evening, as she walked through the crowded streets of the city, she received an urgent communication from her people. The message was clear and alarming. A rogue faction of aliens had launched an attack on Earth. They didn't want Earth to become part of the galaxy's peace. They didn't want humans to be included in the treaty. They feared the humans' unpredictability, and they saw them as a threat to the galaxy's order. Lyra felt her heart drop. She knew that the faction would stop at nothing to keep Earth isolated. They were ruthless and willing to do whatever it took to maintain control. It wasn't just about Earth anymore. It was about the future of the entire galaxy. She rushed to meet with the human government officials who had been working with her. The information she brought was top secret, and they needed to act fast. The rogue faction had planted agents on Earth, working from the shadows to cause chaos and disrupt any progress. If they weren't stopped, the galaxy would be plunged into war. I have to warn Ethan, Lyra thought to herself as she made her way to his apartment. The thought of him being caught in the middle of this battle made her stomach twist with fear. She knew that, despite the differences between their species, she couldn't just stand by and watch harm come to him. When she arrived at his door, she hesitated before knocking. What if he didn't understand? What if the truth was too much for him to handle? But she couldn't keep it from him. Not now. Ethan opened the door, his face lighting up when he saw her. Lyra, hey, what's going on? You look different. Something's wrong, isn't it? Lyra looked at him, her mind racing. Ethan, I need you to listen carefully. There's a threat, a very real one. Some of my people, others who don't share the same vision for peace, have decided that Earth is a danger. They're going to do whatever it takes to stop you from being included in the Galactic Treaty. They'll stop at nothing, even if it means attacking. Ethan's face turned serious, the playful smile vanishing. What kind of attack? How bad is it? It's not just an attack, Lyra explained, her voice trembling. They've infiltrated your government. They've planted agents who are working to sabotage everything. They're trying to make Earth look unstable, so my people will pull out of the treaty. If we don't stop them, the war will come. Ethan's expression hardened. So what do we do? Lyra's eyes locked onto his. We need to stop them before they can do more damage. I'm not sure who we can trust anymore, but I know we can't let this happen. Ethan nodded, his jaw set with determination. We'll fight together. Whatever it takes, we'll make sure they don't win. Lyra felt a surge of something deep inside her. Hope, maybe. Maybe, just maybe, humans were capable of more than she ever thought. Together, they would stop this threat, no matter what it cost. The night air was cool as Lyra and Ethan hurried through the streets, trying to stay out of sight. The rogue alien faction's agents were everywhere, and every corner seemed to hide a new danger. Lyra had never felt so vulnerable, but she couldn't ignore the bond she had with Ethan. He was right beside her, offering support, his presence a constant reminder that she wasn't alone. "We have to move fast," Lyra said, glancing around nervously. "They'll be looking for us. We can't trust anyone." Ethan nodded, his face grim. "I get it. But where do we go? How do we hide from them?" Lyra took a deep breath. "I know a safe place. It's outside the city, a place where we can lay low until we figure out our next move. But we have to get there first." They continued walking, careful not to draw attention. Lyra's heart raced with each step. She had never expected to find herself in this situation, fleeing from her own people, trying to protect a world that had once seemed so distant and irrelevant. And yet here she was, putting her trust in a human who had shown her more kindness than she ever thought possible. As they reached the outskirts of the city, Lyra's mind raced with questions. Could they really stop the rogue faction? Could they expose the conspiracy without causing an all-out war? The weight of the situation felt heavy on her shoulders, but every time she looked at Ethan, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. "What happens next?" Ethan asked, breaking her train of thought. "I don't know," Lyra admitted. "We need to find a way to contact my people, the ones who still want peace. If we can convince them that Earth is worth saving, we might be able to stop the war before it starts." They reached the small, abandoned cabin Lyra had mentioned. It was hidden deep in the woods, far away from any major settlements. Lyra had used this place in the past when she needed to escape from the political pressures of her own people. Now, it was their only safe haven. Inside, the air was damp and cold, but at least they were hidden. Lyra moved quickly, setting up a communication device she had brought with her. She knew it wasn't perfect. Most of the communication channels were compromised, but it was their best shot at reaching the right people. Ethan sat down beside her, watching her work. "I never thought I'd be part of something like this," he said softly. "You know, saving the world. It feels bigger than I ever imagined." Lyra smiled faintly. "It's not just saving the world, Ethan. It's about saving our future. The future of both our species." There was a long pause as they both reflected on what lay ahead. The fate of Earth and Lyra's people rested on their shoulders now, and despite the fear in Lyra's heart, she knew they had to fight. They had to stop the rogue faction from destroying everything. Lyra finished setting up the device and turned to Ethan. "I sent the message. Now we wait." Ethan leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "What if they don't believe us? What if we can't stop them?" Lyra looked him in the eye, her voice firm. "We will stop them. Together. We have to." The night stretched on, and they waited in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. But in that moment, Lyra felt a sense of calm she hadn't felt in days. They had a chance, and for the first time, she truly believed they could make a difference. Lyra couldn't sleep. The quiet cabin was filled with the sounds of the night, the rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft whispers of wind. But her mind was far from peaceful. The message had been sent, and now all they could do was wait. Ethan sat by the window, watching the trees sway, lost in his own thoughts. But Lyra knew something wasn't right. She had spent years working for her people, training, following orders, believing in their cause. She had trusted them. But now, with everything she had learned, the truth was slipping through her fingers like sand. What if the humans weren't the problem? What if her people were? What if everything she had been taught was a lie? She couldn't ignore the feeling growing inside her, a feeling that something far darker was at play. She needed answers, and the only way to get them was to go straight to the source. "Ethan," Lyra said, breaking the silence, "I need to tell you something. Something I've just learned." Ethan turned to her, his eyes full of concern. "What is it?" Lyra walked over to the communication device she had set up earlier, her fingers trembling as she powered it on. The device flickered to life, and Lyra quickly connected to a secure channel. She didn't know if anyone would answer, but she had to try. There was too much at stake now. After a moment, the screen buzzed and a face appeared. It was an alien woman, someone Lyra recognized. It was Aria, one of the highest-ranking officials in the Peace Alliance. Her expression was serious, her eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination. "Lyra," Aria's voice crackled through the static. "I received your message. What is this about the rogue faction? What's happening on Earth?" Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She had hoped for a moment of relief, but instead, she felt a wave of dread wash over her. "Aria, there's something you need to know. The rogue faction isn't just trying to stop the treaty. They're working from within. They've infiltrated our own ranks." Aria's eyes narrowed, and she leaned in closer to the screen. "What do you mean? How is that possible?" Lyra took a deep breath. "I've learned that the rogue faction isn't just acting on their own. They've been working with certain high-ranking members of our government, people who want to control Earth for themselves. They don't want peace. They want power, and they've been hiding this from the rest of us." For a moment, there was silence on the other end. Then Aria spoke, her voice filled with shock. This changes everything. If what you're saying is true, then Earth isn't the only one at risk. Our entire way of life is under threat." Lyra felt her heart sink. "I know, and I'm afraid we might be too late to stop them." Aria's eyes softened, and for the first time in their conversation, Lyra saw a flicker of hope. "Lyra, you're not alone in this. We've been tracking these individuals, and we can help you. We'll bring down the rogue faction together. We'll stop them before they destroy everything." Lyra nodded, a mixture of relief and fear flooding her chest. "We'll do it together, but we need to move fast." As the communication ended, Lyra turned to Ethan. His expression was serious, but there was no fear in his eyes, just determination. "They won't get away with this," Ethan said, his voice firm. "We'll stop them, Lyra. Together." Lyra looked at him, grateful for his unwavering support. She had been right to trust him, and now they had a real chance to save not just Earth, but the galaxy itself. The morning after their conversation with Aria, Lyra felt the weight of the mission press down on her more than ever. The rogue faction's plans were now clearer, but the true danger was still hidden in the shadows. Lyra and Ethan had to act fast, but they couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. They had been moving in and out of secret locations, meeting with a few trusted allies who were working with Lyra to bring down the rogue faction. Each step was calculated, but it felt like they were always one step behind. The more they dug into the conspiracy, the more it became clear that they were fighting not just the rogue faction, but the very system that Lyra had once trusted completely. One evening, as they sat in their temporary safe house, a sudden knock on the door startled them. Lyra stood, her instincts telling her that something was wrong. Ethan followed her to the door, his face tense. Lyra opened the door cautiously, her hand hovering near her hidden weapon. But when she saw who it was, her breath caught in her throat. It was her sister, Celine. "What are you doing here?" Lyra asked, her voice tight with suspicion. "You shouldn't be here." Celine's eyes darted between Lyra and Ethan. She stepped inside, her expression cold, unreadable. "I've been watching you," she said flatly, "and I don't like what I'm seeing." Ethan glanced at Lyra, sensing the tension in the air. "What's going on?" he asked cautiously. "I need to talk to my sister," Lyra replied, her voice steady but unsure. "Alone." Ethan hesitated but finally nodded, stepping back to give them space. He sat down on a nearby chair, his eyes still on Celine, trying to gauge her true intentions. Lyra turned back to her sister, her heart pounding. "Why are you here, Celine? You know I can't trust you anymore, after everything you said before." Celine's face darkened, and her eyes flickered with something unreadable. "You think I'm the enemy?" she asked, her voice low and dangerously calm. "You think I'm the one who's been lying to you." Lyra's stomach twisted. "You're working with the rogue faction." "I know it. I saw the evidence." Celine's lips curled into a thin smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Lyra. The rogue faction is just a tool. They're not the real enemy. You are." Lyra froze, her mind racing to understand what her sister was saying. "What do you mean?" she whispered. "The treaty was never meant to bring peace," Celine said, her voice almost a hiss. "It was meant to control Earth, to turn humanity into a pawn for our people's greater goals. And you, Lyra, were too weak to see it." Lyra felt the world around her tilt. "You've been lying to me all this time." "Not lying," Celine corrected, her tone cold. "I've been protecting you from the truth. But now you're a liability. You're too soft, too human." Celine's eyes narrowed, and she stepped closer. "And if I have to eliminate that weakness, then I will." Lyra's heart sank. She had never imagined her own sister would betray her so completely. But now, standing in front of her, there was no mistaking it. Celine was no longer the person she had trusted. She was a threat. Ethan stood up quickly, moving to stand beside Lyra, ready to defend her. "We won't let you do this," he said, his voice filled with quiet fury. Lyra turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to stop her, before it's too late." The tension in the room was palpable. Lyra stood face to face with her sister, Celine, the one person she had always trusted above all others. But now, the truth was clear. Celine wasn't just working with the rogue faction. She was the rogue faction. The betrayal ran deeper than Lyra could have ever imagined. Ethan stood beside her, his eyes locked on Celine with an intensity that mirrored Lyra's own. He wasn't just protecting her anymore. He was fighting for their future, for the future of Earth. "Celine," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "You've chosen the wrong side. I never thought you would go this far, but I won't let you destroy everything we've worked for." Celine's smile was cold and mocking. "You're still so naive, Lyra. You always were. But this is bigger than you or me. The galaxy needs to be controlled, and if Earth is the price we pay to ensure peace, then so be it." Lyra's fists clenched at her sides, the anger building inside her. "This isn't peace, Celine. This is domination. You're willing to sacrifice an entire world for your own power." Celine's eyes flickered for a moment, but the mask quickly returned. "And what will you do about it? You're just one defector. Your mission was to observe, not to change anything. You've already failed." Ethan stepped forward, his expression unwavering. "We'll stop you. You and your faction won't win. Not while we're still fighting." For a brief moment, Lyra saw a flicker of uncertainty in Celine's eyes. It was only a flash, but it was there. Her sister was strong, but even she couldn't ignore the truth forever. The fight for control, for domination. It wasn't just about politics. It was about what kind of future they wanted. And Lyra wasn't willing to let that future slip away. "I've learned something about humans," Lyra continued, her voice firm. "They may not have the power we do, but they have something stronger. Their will to fight for what they believe in. And that's why I'm standing with them." Celine's eyes hardened. "You're making a mistake, the fatal one." With that, Celine signaled to the group of her loyal soldiers who had been waiting in the shadows. The door to the cabin burst open, and several armed figures rushed in, weapons drawn. The room filled with the sound of weapons charging, the threat of violence hanging heavy in the air. Lyra didn't hesitate. She quickly reached for the hidden blaster at her side, her fingers moving with practiced ease. Ethan did the same, his eyes never leaving Celine. "You'll regret this," Celine sneered. "I don't think so," Lyra said, aiming her weapon at her sister. "This ends now." Before Celine could react, the door behind her exploded, and several of Lyra's true allies, the ones who still believed in peace, burst into the room. The battle that followed was swift but intense. Lyra and Ethan fought side by side, working in perfect sync. Ethan's quick thinking and determination kept them one step ahead, while Lyra used her advanced skills to neutralize the soldiers without hesitation. The fight didn't last long. Lyra's allies quickly overwhelmed Celine's forces, but the leader herself stood her ground, glaring at Lyra with fury in her eyes. "You think you've won, Lyra?" Celine spat. "This is just the beginning. You can't stop what's already set in motion." Lyra's voice was steady, but the weight of the situation was not lost on her. "Maybe not, but we'll make sure you don't destroy everything. Not today." Celine's eyes narrowed. "You're too weak. You always were." Before Lyra could respond, her sister turned and vanished into the shadows, disappearing into the chaos. It wasn't over. Not yet. But Lyra knew one thing for sure. The fight for Earth's future had just begun. The dust from the battle had settled, but the weight of what had just happened hung heavily in the air. Lyra stood in the middle of the cabin, surrounded by the remnants of the fight. Her breath was steady, but her heart was racing. She had just faced the ultimate betrayal, but now the real battle was just beginning. Ethan stood beside her, his expression determined but tired. He wiped blood from a small cut on his forehead, but the look in his eyes was one of unwavering support. They had survived the fight, but Lyra knew that the hardest part was still ahead of them. "We did it," Ethan said quietly, his voice hoarse from the fight. "But Celine, she's still out there. And she's not done yet." Lyra nodded. She had no illusions about how far her sister was willing to go to achieve her goal. The rogue faction still had power, and they wouldn't give up easily. But Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The bond between her and Ethan was stronger than ever, and for the first time, Lyra truly believed that together, they could face whatever came next. "We need to make a choice, Ethan," Lyra said, her voice soft but firm. "We can't keep running. We can't keep hiding. If we want to stop Celine and the rogue faction, we need to go to the source. We need to take the fight to them." Ethan turned to her, his eyes filled with understanding. "You're right. We've been on the defensive for too long. It's time to end this. But what about you, Lyra? After everything that's happened?" Lyra's gaze softened. "I've already made my choice. I'm not going back to my people. Not now. Not after everything I've learned. My sister is wrong. She's been blinded by her thirst for power. I can't follow her anymore." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch gentle but grounding. "Then we'll do it together. We'll stop them, Lyra. For Earth. For both of our people." Lyra smiled faintly, the weight of the decision lifting a little. It wasn't easy. Nothing ever was. But with Ethan by her side, she felt stronger than she had ever felt before. She wasn't just an alien diplomat anymore. She was a part of something bigger. She was fighting for a future where humans and aliens could live in peace, not under control, but in mutual respect. "We'll need help," Lyra said. "I've contacted the remaining allies who still believe in the peace we started. But we'll have to move quickly before the rogue faction can rally again. If we're going to stop them, we need to cut off their power." Ethan nodded. "Then we'll do whatever it takes." The sun was setting outside, casting a golden glow over the cabin. Lyra stood at the window, looking out at the horizon, her mind already racing with plans. She knew that the road ahead would be dangerous, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of purpose that nothing could take away. Together, they would stop the rogue faction and protect both Earth and her people. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about building a future. And no matter how hard the journey ahead would be, Lyra knew one thing for sure. She wasn't alone. She had Ethan by her side, and together, they would change the course of history. The world was quiet now. The battle was over, but the war for Earth's future had just begun. Lyra stood on the edge of a cliff, looking out over the vast landscape. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. A new day was dawning, and with it, a new hope. Beside her, Ethan stood quietly, his presence a comforting reminder of everything they had fought for. The weight of the last few weeks was heavy on both of them. They had faced betrayal, loss, and danger, but they had also found something they hadn't expected: each other. Together, they had become a force strong enough to challenge everything they had known. "We did it," Ethan said softly, his voice carrying a sense of relief and pride. "We stopped Selene and her faction. We stopped the war." Lyra nodded but didn't speak right away. Her thoughts were on what lay ahead. Stopping the rogue faction was just the beginning. Now, they had to rebuild. They had to make sure that Earth was safe, that the humans were ready to join the greater peace her people had once dreamed of. "We did," Lyra replied finally. "But this is just the start. We have to work together now, not just to keep the peace, but to build it. The future of both our worlds depends on it." Ethan turned to her, his eyes filled with understanding. "I don't know how things are going to work out, Lyra. There's so much to fix, so many people to bring together. But I do know one thing: we're stronger together." Lyra smiled faintly. Ethan was right. Their bond had changed everything. It wasn't just about peace treaties or political alliances. It was about the people, the humans, the aliens coming together to find common ground. They had to build trust, something that had been broken for so long. But now, with everything they had learned, they could begin again. "We'll need to prove to both our people that peace is worth fighting for," Lyra said. "It won't be easy. There will be resistance, but we have to show them that there's more to life than control and power. We need to learn from each other, to respect each other, and to work together." Ethan looked out at the horizon, his expression thoughtful. "And I'll be right beside you, Lyra. I don't care what comes next. We've got this." Lyra looked at him, the sense of gratitude in her heart growing. She had never imagined that her journey would bring her to this point, standing here with Ethan, a human who had become so much more than just an ally. He had become a partner, a friend, and someone she trusted with her life. The future was uncertain, but with Ethan by her side, Lyra knew that anything was possible. They would face challenges, of course. There would be those who resisted change, who didn't believe in the vision they were fighting for. But Lyra was no longer afraid. She had seen the strength of humanity, the courage of a species willing to fight for what was right. As the last light of the sun faded into night, Lyra turned to Ethan, her eyes filled with determination. "We're going to make it, Ethan. Together, we'll build a future where both our worlds can thrive." Ethan smiled, his hand brushing against hers. Together. And for the first time in a long while, Lyra felt a sense of peace. The road ahead would be difficult, but it was a road they would walk together, side by side, as partners in a world that was finally ready to change.